regularly and do art shows on his own, which helped to promote himself, but also to expose people to life in coal country. But after he passed away, there was sort of a flurry of exhibits in the 1980s, and then after that, it all died. So, you know, part of what I've been trying to do is to try to bring back his work and his memory. This is a scene from the patch, Red Patch, which is where my dad actually grew up on the street. And it's called Red Patch because back in those days, the old wooden framed houses there, which originally had been owned by the mines, but in some cases, like with my own grandmother, they were duplexes, by the way, side-by-sides. If you've ever been out to Pennsylvania, you know what they look like. My grandmother was fortunate and unfortunate. My grandfather died, and she got some benefits from the disability and death benefits from the mines, so she was able to buy half of a duplex here on Willow Lane. So I look at that sometimes, and I see those little two ladies down the lane here buying something from a butcher, because they used to have a butcher go around with a cart in those days. Like some of you here look like you're old enough to remember those days. I know from Jersey City days, we used to have a guy with a wagon coming around selling fruits and vegetables. Yeah. Same thing there. The grocer used to go out. So anyway, they're down there on Willow Lane, and the ladies are coming out and buying vegetables, fruits, who knows what else. Anyway, sometimes I imagine that's Baba down here on the lane. But Bervinchak, literally, if you're looking down the lane, his house is back here. And it's not his house, he was renting the house. The rent was about $12 a week. And he's looking down Willow Lane. And, you know, he kind of does studies at different times of the year, too. So this is summer. There's also a winter version of this as well. One of my favorite here is Bootlegger's Wife and Son, 1939. Bootleg mining, I don't know if any of you know exactly what it is. It has nothing to do with liquor and alcohol. As the mines began to wind down during the Depression, more than 50% of the able-bodied men were out of work in Schuylkill County. So they turned to the natural thing there was to do, was to go around and try to pick up pieces of coal that they might find laying around on the road and so forth. Initially, they used that to heat their homes. But little by little, you know, the wheels started turning, and they realized, you know, if we got enough of this together, we could probably get somebody who has a truck, and we could probably go down to Philly and sell some of this. And so that's what they started doing. Bootleg mining in Schuylkill County became a $35 million business by 1939. But it was all literally underground. And it wasn't legal. That's why they called it bootleg. Because technically speaking, the mine owners owned the rights to the mineral underground. So even if you owned a house, you didn't own what was under the ground. You only owned what was on the surface. The mines owned that. So there was this constant war. You know, we talked a little bit in the beginning about the Molly Maguires. There was a war now between bootleg miners and coal miners. And the bootleg miners would go and dig there. They used to call them dog holes. You can see there's a little bit of a hole down here in the ground. They don't go very deep. And they would come up with this makeshift equipment. They would put a little windlass in there with a bucket. And then, you know, the old man would go down in the hole, literally, and start tapping away and pull out what he could. They'd pull it up. You have a little pile in the back there. This happens to be Mrs. Chaplinsky, by the way. Mrs. Chaplinsky and her son lived behind the Olenek house, and we'll talk about the Oleniks a little bit later because they were great friends with the Bervinchak family. But anyway, so here they are out here, and they're pulling out what they can, and then eventually they would pool the coal that they pulled out, take whatever they needed for heating, and the rest of it they started shipping to different places, down to Reading and Philly and other places. So it became big business. But all the time, my dad would tell me stories out there about, you know, how the coal and iron police would come and they would throw dynamite down here when the guys were down there. So it was dangerous when they were working for the mines, and it was dangerous when they were trying to make a living on their own.